All right, how's it going out there, folks? How's everyone enjoying their weekend out here so far? It is the Earthmaster, about 3:27 p.m. California time, September 14th, 2024. Latest activity on the Earthquake 3D globe here. We'll check this out real quick, then we'll get into space weather activity. Shows a 1.4 into the Bay Area of California. Also had a 3-pointer, 3.2 around the Long Valley supervolcano. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. First things first, want to cover this CME activity that was produced from this morning's massive X-flare. Here's the sun in the yellow right here, Earth in the green. X-flare did produce a significant CME. The majority of the plasma cloud there directed to our east on the Earth-Sun plane out here. So we're not going to get the full brunt, but notice here there's a little separation of intense plasma right about here, and you can see it more well defined on this image, and it shows a significant impact to the planet tomorrow night. This is a very fast moving CME. A lot of times it can take up to 72 hours or so for a CME to hit the planet following, an explosion like that. But this one's super fast, should have speed elevated up around the 800 range. That's super fast in terms of the velocity. A good, decent shot here of the plasma density. That's the bulk of the energy from the CME. And this is all forecast to produce a potential G3 class storm here tomorrow night. If we look at tomorrow night's forecast here, as you can see from the Space Weather Prediction Center, KP index up around the 7. That's a G3 class storm. Now, if you remember all those auroras back in May of this year, that was a G5 storm. Conditions were not forecasted to be a G5, but it was a result of multiple CMEs along with the BZ component of the interplanetary magnetic field that was pointing south. It allowed further escalation of the space weather plasma density and elevated the auroras to a G5 class storm. KP index, I believe, was up around the 8 or 9 range. Pretty significant. So tomorrow night, KP index of 7, and that's going to be dependent on a couple different factors here. Let me show you guys a real-time solar wind stream here. I remember when we were seeing all those auroras, this line right here, this BZ component on the top graph was way south here, tilted way south. This is a line that you want to be south of for aurora amplification. If it's north here of this line, then that's a northward tilt, and that normally suppresses any of the aurora activity out here, even if we got a significant solar storm that was hitting the planet. A little bit of fluctuation here, but it looks like in the last few minutes, been north of this line. Again, this isn't supposed to hit us until tomorrow night. And again, KP index of 7, G3 class storm. That's fairly significant. And that is the result of this morning's massive X-flare from a sunspot that has been previously thrown out massive explosions there, CMEs, on the far side of the sun here over the last couple weeks. So now that it's in more of a somewhat of an Earth-directed view, we're going to have to watch this pretty closely. There's the X4.5 that shot off this morning. And no doubt that was a significant flare. Let me show you guys the imagery here real quick. See if we can pull out the 48-hour movie from the NASA.gov website. We'll put this into motion here real quick. And the sunspot in question's out over here. Did produce that a fairly significant X-flare about 2 days or so ago. But more notable this morning for the X4.5, which is right about, watch this corner down here. Boom. You guys catch that? So we have to slow this down just a little bit to be able to see that beautiful large CME explosion that struck out there this morning. Right there. And it threw off a massive amount of plasma here. Again, I showed you guys on that chart, the bulk of it over here off the Earth-Sun plane to the east. Right? But we're getting that little shot of a pretty good density cloud there that split off the main bulk of the plasma that shot off from this flare, and should amplify conditions here tomorrow night for a potentially significant aurora show. Got 90% chance here for high latitude storming, mid latitudes at 50%. We could see it down into some of these states here, talking about the Central Plains area, Nebraska, maybe down into Oklahoma. We'll have to see. And it's all going to be dependent, again, on a couple of different factors. One, if the forecast is correct in terms of the bulk of plasma, and also the BZ component there of the interplanetary magnetic field needs to be south of that line I just showed you guys, and or below that line, southward tilt. That would amplify the conditions, and with a bulk of plasma coming in like this, we could see maybe even a G4 class storm out here if things work out the way they could. It happened back in May. We could see maybe something similar. I don't think we'll see it as intense, but hey, we could just hope for the best outcome here for tomorrow. Either way, G3 class storm warning in effect, and we'll see how it goes. There it is, KP index up around the 7. Now the current flare level here has been elevated. I was waiting for that to elevate here. I need to update that on the live stream, but I knew it was higher. This sunspot has been throwing off numerous large explosions here before arriving here on the Earth-facing side of the sun. So back over here a few days ago and a week or so ago, there was multiple large explosions there. Now I think we're going to see another large X-flare explosion here in the coming days. It seems like every 2 to 3 days this thing produces a massive X-flare. 2 days ago was one over here, more recent one this morning. So as this gets more into an Earth-directed view, and if it's continuing to produce X-flares with subsequent large CMEs, we're talking about some aurora activity here this week, this coming week, and could be a dandy of a one. G3 class storm tomorrow night. That is going to be for Sunday. Monday night looks like that could be enhanced as well with a G2 class storm, so we'll have to watch for the arrival of this. Looking at the complexity of sunspot 3825, that is the culprit of all these recent explosions there on the sun, is fairly complex still. A lot of intermixing here within the central core. That's a beta gamma delta structure. There's many different structures or classifications for sunspots, and it's these type of sunspots right here that's got a lot of intermixing of the polarities that are capable of producing these large X-flares. So this morning's X-flare, X4.5, was the 5th largest solar flare for this solar cycle. Not bad, huh? Definitely not bad. We've seen some larger ones. But if you look up here, the X8.7 back in May, we had an X5.8 back in May, X4.5 back in May, X3.9 back in May, X3.4. All these were a result of a massive sunspot region, 3664, and it produced numerous explosions, Earth-directed. So we had multiple CMEs coming at us during the month of May, and that, goodness, we've seen auroras down into Southern California, Mexico, Southern Texas. It almost seemed like everyone got a chance to see them. First time ever in my life seeing the auroras, and I got to see them here in Northern California. Goodness, and they were a beauty. We had a lot of pink color ribbons and waves up there, way up above the surface there, and it was beautiful. So X4.5 is the 5th largest flare. It ties for this one back in May, another X flare, the X4.5 from a sunspot there. So I don't think we're done yet. Obviously, we got quite a bit of complexity within that sunspot core, and we're not even at solar maximum yet. That is going to be coming up here June of next year, June 2025. And then from there, we'll slowly venture down towards solar minimum, but we'll have at least a couple years here following the peak of enhanced solar activity. So things could really get interesting here over the next year or so in terms of elevated space weather activity. We are getting a proton event. These protons get shot off at the speed of light pretty much and reach the planet within minutes. The CMEs, the bulk plasma cloud, takes a little while. It doesn't get shut off at the speed of light. Otherwise, it'd be here, by now. It takes a little while. So it looks like tomorrow night we should see the arrival of that fast-moving CME. But these protons, again, they get shut off very fast. Not a bunch of proton activity right now, but this could just be getting started out here. And mainly The proton events affect the higher levels of the planet and lower levels there around the solar pole, radio communication system, and navigation systems as well. But for us here, center around the majority of the population of this planet, we're in the clear for now. Let's see. Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that sunspot. Flare threat has been jumped up here to about 25% chance for an X flare. M flare at 75% chance. C flare around 99% chance or so. And there's your proton event. That could enhance here throughout the afternoon and evening as the protons continue to bombard the planet. All right, so far as earthquake activity goes, got a 3-pointer out here across the area outside of Mono Lake here, north of Long Valley Supervolcano, about 3 miles here below the surface for a 3.2. Not a big earthquake, but it's still an overall sign here of periodic increasing movement across the southern portion of the state of California and western Nevada more specifically as well. Let's see. I don't have the Nevada station up. I keep forgetting. I'm going to have to add this. Someone's going to have to email me and remind me to add the Nevada station there. And also Bakersfield. Looks like, no, I add Bakersfield. There it is. But I could use the Nevada station because we've been having earthquake activity out here, and it's not being reported. I've been seeing it show up on the seismograph stations, but nothing being reported out here. And there's been tons of earthquakes over the last 30 days. We've had multiple swarms out here against western Nevada, right up against the Sierra Nevada mountains here. And that's almost unheard of to see this amount of earthquake activity in a linear fashion. Pretty much stretches here from Reno southward, westward across the Tehachapi Mountains, and then south here towards the San Andreas Fault. But this here is mainly on the Pacific side of the plate boundary, where we've been seeing all the recent earthquake activity in Southern California. And that is still continuing today. Around the Fontana area, of course, this is the area that's seen a fairly decent swarm here in the last... Hasn't it been more than that? Let me see here. Yeah, we got about 55 earthquakes here. The majority of this within the last week or two. I don't think we've seen anything really saw anything last month. Looks like it kicked up on the 7th, so about a week ago. Even though I have to go back the last 30 days to show it to you guys. There was a significant swarm there, and also got another 1.6 coming into the area as we speak. Another area of watch here is across the Malibu area, where we had a 4.7 earthquake here in the last week, right? Coming up on 44 earthquakes in the sequence of activity. There's a 4.7. We've seen multiple 3s in there. The latest one, a 1.5. And the majority of this from yesterday. But we may be starting to see a little bit of activity stirring up out here right now. Southern California has been on the topic chart for a few weeks now. Elevated activity out here in Southern California. A lot of folks got their nerves rattled out here, and it's a little unsettling if you think about it. We got numerous fault systems out here that are strained to the max potential. And, of course, we got the major plate boundary here, the San Andreas Fault, the southern end here, that's capable of producing an 8.1 earthquake. That is the facts, and when you get all these earthquakes around it, it's what's going on. Could it lead to something bigger? I firmly believe that the possibility of something larger taking place out here is way more elevated when we're seeing all these little sequence of earthquakes all around it, right? It'd be foolish to just turn a blind eye to all this activity. We haven't seen the big one yet. We haven't even seen anything minor to moderate on the San Andreas Fault. But when you encase this plate boundary with multiple quakes, multiple different swarms in various locations, it makes sense there that the plate boundary is under more incredible strain than what it has been in a very long time. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that plate boundary. The San Andreas Fault, not going to be like the movie, right, where everything falls off in the ocean. But hey, there's liquefaction possibilities out here across the LA basin. There's always a concern of the infrastructure and whatnot when the 8.1 does hit. Say, for example, if it's not the 8.1 there along the San Andreas Fault, we got potential of a 7.5 here on the Puente Hills Thrust Fault. That's another area that's been seeing some swarming. I'd have to go back prior to the last 30 days to show you guys the elevated activity out here, where they've seen a 4.4 and multiple earthquakes in this region there underneath Los Angeles. And that fault system's capable of producing a 7.5. And no one will tell me when the last one was. I've tried multiple times. You guys probably have seen all the comments I've left there on Dr. Lucy Jones's page, and not a peep, squeak, or anything. She won't even respond to me. Maybe I'm not that important, right? I'm not ABC News or CNN. So I'm the Earthmaster, a YouTube channel out here. I know my stuff. I know geology. I've been studying this stuff for a long time. Maybe not as long as Dr. Lucy Jones. She does have the knowledge. But, a little bit of flopping back and forth on her consistency of her wordings out here recently. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Southern California area. Northern Cal, what do you got up here along the San Andreas Fault? A couple smaller earthquakes up here. Near Dillon Beach, 1.3 and a 1.4 earthquake within seconds of each other. This is the area that produced a 9-pointer. Yeah, right. 7.9 back in 1906. The last major rupture out here. And by the way, that 1989 earthquake during the World Series, there's a little bit of chat that earthquake was not on the San Andreas Fault. Let me go back here real quick and double check stuff here real quick. That was a 6-point something, if I remember right. Let's just go 5.5 and above. And I want to go back there to the 1989 time period. Dang, that was a long time ago. Goodness, we'll just shoot in 1980. All right. And want to draw a little rectangle here, or square, or whatever. Can't draw a triangle, so I guess I'll have to stick to a square or a rectangle. And we'll cover that. That happened somewhere down south here. Let me see exactly where that's at. That's a good question, though, because I don't think that occurred on the... it's a Loma Prieta earthquake, 6.9. 2014, off of the San Andreas Fault, 6-pointer. But that 6.9 occurred not on the plate boundary itself there. It was actually off of it. The plate boundary sits over here, the Santa Cruz Mountains area. But this earthquake struck on a stress zone just due west here. I think it's this one. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce that right now because I don't want to slaughter it. But, that they discovered that was not actually on the San Andreas Fault. Very close. And the 1906 earthquake, obviously up here, was on the San Andreas Fault, the northern segment. 1989 earthquake, Loma Prieta earthquake there. I remember that very well. Remember being inside playing some video games on the old Nintendo, right? I think I was playing Super Mario Brothers, if I remember right. And that earthquake, when it struck, I was inside. My mom had all these wind chimes inside, and occasionally, she'd open up the window to let the breeze come in and blow the wind chimes, which is awesome. You don't have to have outside wind chimes. And so my mom had wind chimes indoors, and it wasn't windy at all. We had our windows open, and all of a sudden my mom's wind chimes started going off. And I look over at them, and it's like, man, there's nothing blowing. The curtains aren't blowing. There's no wind outside. It's October day. There's not a whole lot of wind going on there. And then I started feeling a little bit of dizziness, and then my dad came inside from outside. He was doing some yard work and said he started getting sick. We lived at the time down in just north of Sacramento a little ways there in Colusa County. And goodness, I remember that very well, the shaking of that. And I've had experienced a couple different earthquakes since then, but we were way up here north of Sacramento around this area of Colusa County, and that was a considerable distance. 6.9. Again, that's off of the San Andreas Fault. So, I'm trying to think if we have enough strain out here in the northern segment for a big earthquake. 1906, 2006, I don't think so, but periodically we do get a little bit of earthquake activity out here on this area of the San Andreas Fault. The more concerning part is the Parkfield segment, right? That area could trigger, if we get a trigger down here on the southern end of the Parkfield section of the San Andreas Fault, that could trigger into the locked area around this bend area of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault and produce that 8.1. You never know. Southern California is highly dynamic in terms of the plate structure and boundaries and fault systems. We have many west to east, many north to south, all different types of thrust faults, transform boundaries, you name it, dipping fault zones. It's a cluster spiderweb mess of strain out here. And all these different types of faults and areas are in relation to what's going on here across the plate boundary itself. This is where the big ones hit. This is where the 8.1 is going to hit. Southern branch hasn't seen anything in 300 years. So tell me, it's a scary thought. But as we get more and more earthquake activity here over the last few weeks, it's a good time to be prepared, folks, because I think if anything, it could be giving us a couple signs out here. More than just a couple signs, a lot of signs. And they're all pointing towards a bunch of earthquake activity, more so than what we've seen in terms of 4.0 and above since, I think Dr. Lucy Jones said, the last 65 years. All right. Backing out of here, see what else we got for worldwide activity. I really just wanted to jump on and discuss the space weather activity, but I'll cover California there with the activity as well. Java Trench region seen some deeper activity out here with a 5.1 off the coast of Sumatra. Actually, this one's fairly deep here underneath the Sumatra area into the Java Trench, 79 miles deep. This is the area that's seen the 9-pointer. 2004, I think, the Indian Ocean tsunami. That was a big deal. Created a massive tsunami. Now, luckily, we got a better tsunami warning system. But yeah, watch this area. These deeper quakes here do tend to add further strain upstream along any major subduction zone, and this is a major one. New Zealand still getting some threes out there. Really nothing popping there yet. It's going to happen, but like anywhere else that's built up a lot of steam, things are going to eventually take place out here. 4.3 out in, let's see where that's at, outside of France. Interesting little earthquake out there. 4.3, 6 miles deep here into this basin area off of the plate boundary. Don't really see too much activity out there, but today a 4.3, a couple other smaller quakes out there around the Mediterranean and across the plate boundary. The Atlantic Ocean quiet as can be for now. So we'll continue to keep an eye on things, see how the planet reacts with the bombardment of protons and also the expected G3 class storm here tomorrow night. Now this is something I've been kind of keeping track of, right? And a lot of comments have come in asking me if I'm aware of the space weather relationship and earthquakes. And this is something I've really paid attention to this year. And I've seen it in the past, but more importantly, I've been keeping track of what's been going on with large earthquake activity in relationship to whether it's large flares, a large CME impacting the planet, and proton events. And it seems as though the flares themselves here do not trigger any earthquakes, but it's a resulting effect from the arrival of a massive CME that tends to produce an uptick in larger earthquake activity. Although, back in May, let's go check out May here real quick, right? You guys remember when that big-time solar storm kicked up, right? If there was any time in history to verify the scientific, whether, the theory on whether space weather activity produces large earthquakes or not, that would have been the time back in May when we got the arrival of the solar storm, right? That was a big one. So I just want to check out the month of May here real quick. We got slammed with multiple CMEs, and hey, if we're gonna make a theory about something or try to explain a theory, then this should be the date. This event. We'll go. We'll just go to 6-1 and double check this. I want to check because if I recall, there wasn't a whole lot of earthquake activity, at least large ones. So we'll use the world custom 5-1 to 6-1 of this year, and let's see here. Largest magnitude was a 6.6 earthquake in the Tonga area. Sixes are very common there. 6.4 in the Mexico area, 6.3 Vanuatu area. If you look at how many sixes occur in this area on any given day, that is very common. So let's see, when did that May superstorm kick up? 2024 May superstorm. May, we'll just use Aurora. All right, so we can go to Wikipedia. Has a decent article layout here. This is, when we seen all those auroras back in May. The initial onset was May 10th. The peak was May 11th. All right, so remember those dates there. We're looking at just beginning into the second, just the second week of May. Dissipated May 13th. Now, one cannot say, well, we've seen these large earthquakes at the end of May, and that's the result of these auroras or the CMEs that hit us back in early May. We can't say that. That's like saying I predicted an earthquake in California for 1989, and I made this prediction back in 1960, and it took 30-something years or 20-something years to for it to be. You can't really say that. Come on, that's silly. So you have to look at the correlation as almost an immediate event. So 10th to 13th, let's go ahead and check this out real quick again. 10th to 13th, we had a 6.4 in that mix there in Mexico. These other 6-pointers were well after the fact. You cannot say, yeah, these were the result of the CME activity weeks ago. It doesn't work like that. It's gone, dissipated. There's no effects on that. And a 6.2 prior to the arrival of the CME activity weeks prior. So, aside from that, I really don't see a whole bunch of 5s in there. Okay, 5.8 Kermadec Trench during that activity. But that's really about it, folks. So if we were going to make a theory and say, yeah, that's, the arrival of CMEs and these solar storms here produce a large uptick in earthquakes out here or large earthquake activity, and that just didn't happen. That is the facts. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen every time, but during one of the major solar storms of our lifetime, getting bombarded by, I think there was 5 or 6 multiple large CMEs that slammed into the planet and created auroras that we haven't seen in a very long time. We're talking about G5 class storm, KP index up around 9. That would have been the time for some large earthquake activity to occur with that theory of space weather relationship and large earthquake activity. And it didn't happen. Again, I'm not saying that it's completely ruled out. I do like to pay attention to events. We've done this before and actually spent hours on a video here looking at past space weather events there where we had large flares, and then a couple days later with the CME activity, a large earthquake. But in this case here, it didn't happen. So, got to get a little bit more data together. I'm keeping a log of it, and then maybe a couple years down the road we can go back and look. Tomorrow night is going to be a perfect example. We got a G3 storm coming in with a decent shot of that dense plasma cloud that's going to slam into the planet at about 800 kms or higher a second. So tomorrow night, or during just around the arrival of the CME, it's going to be just another check. I always like to test this, see what happens here. We've seen more 5s out here lately across the Western Pacific, 4s and 5s. And there's space weather activity, but nothing was really Earth-directed until now. So let's check this out. We'll check back tomorrow night, see if the relationship there is, if it's possible or not. Let me know your thoughts, though. I'm kind of curious. A lot of people have, believe that firmly, but I like to not just take one event and say, yeah, this is it. There's no doubt there's space weather relationship and earthquake activity, but we can't because look at back in May, nothing, really nothing, and we got slammed with multiple CMEs, and we've seen earthquakes happen weeks following that event that are normally happening on any given day out here across the Tonga Trench. Look at the Tonga Trench out here in the last 30 days. So come on. This is actually quite normal for this area to see large earthquakes. They've seen a 6.9, 6.1, 6.0. This is a major subduction zone area, and it's always getting strained out here. Minimal adjustment across New Zealand. That's why I'm a little bit concerned, because we have seen a lot of earthquake activity south here around the South Pacific Ocean and the plate boundary down here with Antarctica, and very minimal adjustment across this area. Eventually, that's going to adjust accordingly. So, anyway, I've just seen a couple questions asking about that relationship. Let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear it. And then we'll go from there. But either way, I'll be monitoring everything. Have a good day. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening. I will add that Nevada station here because it's pretty important. I don't see a whole lot of earthquake activity right now. There's a couple spikes on the Cal State Bakersfield station here. Very small earthquakes. But notice they're not reporting any of that activity. It's probably below a 0.1, but nothing's showing up here. So and it's the same with Western Nevada. They cut off the earthquake activity for some reason here in the last, I'd say almost the last week, 5 days. We were having a decent amount of swarming, and then all of a sudden it stopped by itself. That's a little odd and suspicious, if you ask me. So that's why I keep the Nevada station up. We see earthquake activity happening out here, but nothing being reported. Come on now. All right, I'm going to back out of here before my live stream gets shut down. Seems like when I always come up here and voice my opinion, I get shut down on here. So I better not. I better just keep it. And I've been keeping it civil. I'm just trying to state my case here that earthquakes are happening out here on these seismograph stations, and really nothing's being reported. It's a weekend. But Wednesday wasn't a weekend. Thursday wasn't a weekend. Friday wasn't a weekend. Well, I guess you could count it as a weekend. A lot of people, All right. Have a good day, folks. We got some cooler weather coming into the California area. Thank you so much to the weather gods out there. We got a little bit of chances of rain also coming in Northern California. Look at that low pressure trough out here, bringing some cooler temperatures. I'm talking about temperatures down into the low 70s. That's my barbecuing weather right there. So, all right. Have a good one, folks. Stay safe. We will catch you guys back out here for the Saturday night update.